I never thought my life would turn upside down so suddenly. For 17 years, I believed I had everything figured out, a loving husband, a beautiful daughter, and what I thought was an unshakable marriage. My name is Paloma, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the people closest to us can become strangers overnight. Back then, my life followed a comfortable routine. I worked as an accountant at a trading company, crunching numbers and balancing books. It wasn't the most exciting job, but I was good at it, and it helped provide for our family. My husband Mark was a sales representative for a large firm, which meant frequent business trips. I'd gotten used to those absences over the years, even looked forward to his returns when I'd cook all his favorite meals. Our daughter Sarah was 15, a bright teenager who filled our home with energy. She was the perfect blend of both of us, Mark's charm and my determination. We lived in a modest but comfortable apartment, and I thought we were happy. Looking back now, I realize how naive I was to think that contentment could last forever. "When are you coming back this time?" I asked Mark over the phone during one of his business trips. It was a conversation we'd had countless times before. "Should be home by Thursday," he replied, his voice distant. "Don't bother cooking anything special." That should have been my first clue. Mark had always loved my cooking, especially after being away. But lately, everything had changed subtly. He'd come home from his trips different, distracted, thoughtful, almost cold. When he'd walk through the door, instead of the warm embraces I was used to, he'd barely acknowledge the meals I'd prepared. "Are you okay?" I'd ask him repeatedly. "You seem different." "Just tired from work," he'd say, brushing off my concerns. "It's nothing." I blamed it on a midlife crisis. That's what everyone talked about, right? Men hitting their 40s and going through changes. I convinced myself it was temporary, that everything would return to normal if I just gave him time and space. Sarah noticed it too, but we both stayed quiet, hoping it would pass. "Mom, Dad seems weird lately," she mentioned one evening while we were doing dishes together. "He's just stressed with work, honey," I replied, believing my own lies. "These things happen in marriage sometimes. It'll get better." I focused on being the perfect wife, thinking that if I just tried harder, cooked better meals, kept the house more organized, everything would go back to how it was. But life has a way of shattering our illusions when we least expect it. I remember that ordinary Tuesday evening when everything changed. I had just gotten home from work and was checking my social media messages while sitting on the couch in our living room. A message from someone I didn't know. I almost ignored it, but something made me open it. "Hello, Paloma," the message read. "I think it's time we talked. I'm your husband's second wife." My hands trembled as I continued reading the message in our living room. Each word felt like a knife twisting deeper into my heart. "I've been seeing Mark for 3 years now," the message continued. "We have a beautiful son together, the child he always wanted. I'm young, beautiful, and I make him happy in ways you never could." I felt sick to my stomach, but I couldn't stop reading. Then came the screenshots, dozens of them. Messages between my husband and this woman, revealing the ugly truth about his feelings for me. "I can't stand looking at her anymore," Mark had written. "She's gotten so fat and ugly. Being in bed with her is like sleeping next to a log." Tears blurred my vision as I scrolled through more messages. "Her cooking makes me want to vomit. The whole house feels suffocating. If it wasn't for Sarah, I would have left years ago." The final message from this woman felt like the ultimate slap in the face. "If you have any pride left, Paloma, you'll let him go. He doesn't love you anymore. He hasn't for a long time." The room started spinning. I remember trying to stand up, but my legs wouldn't support me. The last thing I heard was my phone clattering to the floor before everything went black. I woke up to Sarah's worried face hovering over me. I was lying on the living room floor where I had collapsed. Mom, can you hear me?" Sarah's voice sounded distant. "I'm calling an ambulance." "No, honey, I'm fine," I tried to say, but the words came out slurred. "The paramedics came anyway." They checked my vitals while I sat on our living room couch, Sarah clutching my hand. That's when Mark walked in. "What happened?" he asked, and for a moment, I saw concern in his eyes. Then he saw my phone on the coffee table, still open to those messages. "Is it true?" I whispered, looking into his eyes. "All of it?" He didn't even try to deny it. His face hardened, and in that moment, I saw the stranger he'd become. "Yes," he said flatly. "I don't love you anymore, Paloma. I haven't for a long time. I want a divorce." Sarah gasped beside me, her grip on my hand tightening. The paramedics tactfully stepped into the kitchen, giving us space. "How could you do this to Mom?" Sarah's voice shook with anger. "How could you?" "I'm sorry you had to find out this way," was all he said before walking out of the room. The next few weeks passed in a blur. I filed for divorce, going through the motions like a zombie. Sarah was my rock through it all, choosing to stay with me, despite Mark's attempts to convince her otherwise. He agreed to pay alimony for her without argument, probably the only decent thing he did during that time. Time moved forward, as it always does. Before I knew it, Sarah was graduating from high school. Mark and I split the costs of her college education equally. It seemed like the only civil interaction we had left. We both wanted the best for our daughter, even if we couldn't stand being in the same room together. Sarah chose a college in another city, and at first everything seemed fine. She called me regularly, telling me about her classes, her new friends, and life in the dorms. I lived for those calls, clinging to each detail she shared about her new life. But gradually, the calls became less frequent. When I tried reaching out, I'd get short, clipped responses. "Sorry, Mom, I'm busy right now. Can't talk, got a study group. Maybe next week, okay?" Each excuse felt like a small punch to the gut, but I told myself she was just busy with college life. Until she stopped coming home altogether. "Why don't you visit anymore, sweetie?" I'd ask during our increasingly rare phone conversations. "Just swamped with schoolwork, Mom. You know how it is." One evening, feeling particularly lonely, I decided to check her social media page. At first, nothing seemed unusual, just typical college posts about classes and friends. Then I saw it. Among her friends list was a familiar face, Mark's wife, the woman who had destroyed my marriage. My hands shaking, I clicked on her profile. What I saw made my blood run cold. There were dozens of photos of Sarah with Mark, his wife, and their son. Happy family photos. "Finally reunited," read one caption. "Complete family time," said another. In every picture, Sarah was beaming, hugging her father and his new wife like they were one big happy family. I felt sick. All those excuses, all those missed visits, she'd been with them the whole time. I took screenshots of the photos and sent them to Sarah with trembling fingers. Then I called her, my heart pounding. She answered on the third ring. Before I could say anything, she cut me off. "I was wondering when you'd find out," she said, her voice cold and unfamiliar. "Why, Sarah, why didn't you tell me?" "Because they're fun, Mom. They're rich and interesting. Dad and Lisa take me shopping, buy me designer clothes. He just got me a new car for my birthday. What do you offer? A boring apartment and your boring life?" Each word felt like a slap. "I'm your mother, Sarah. I raised you." "Yeah, well, I'm old enough to choose who I want to spend time with," she interrupted. "Lisa gives me money whenever I need it. They take me on vacations. If you don't like it, that's your problem." I sat there in my quiet apartment, staring at my phone through tears. First Mark, now Sarah. The two people I loved most in the world had both chosen the younger, prettier, richer woman over me. I curled up on my couch and sobbed, feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. I desperately needed someone to talk to. That's when I remembered my father. We hadn't spoken in 15 years, not since that terrible fight about Mark. Dad had seen right through him, had warned me repeatedly, but I wouldn't listen. "He's not right for you, Paloma," Dad had said back then. "There's something off about him." "You just don't want me to be happy," I had shouted back. "You've never supported my choices." Those were the last words we'd exchanged before I stormed out of his house, choosing Mark over my father. Now, the irony of it all made me laugh bitterly. Dad had been right all along. With trembling fingers, I dialed his number, half expecting it to be disconnected after all these years. "Hello?" His voice hadn't changed at all. "Dad?" My voice cracked. "It's Paloma. I was wondering if we could talk?" "Come over right now," he said without hesitation. "I'll text you the gate code." Gate code? I wondered as I drove to my childhood home. But nothing could have prepared me for what I found. The modest house I grew up in had been transformed into a stunning estate. A security gate guarded the entrance, and the house itself had been completely renovated, at least triple its original size. Dad was waiting at the door, his hair grayer than I remembered, but his eyes just as kind. "Welcome home, sweetheart." "Dad, what, how?" I gestured at the house. He grinned proudly. "A lot can happen in 15 years. Come inside, I'll explain everything." Over coffee in what used to be our simple kitchen, now a gourmet masterpiece, Dad told me how he'd built a real estate empire from scratch. "I own about 30 properties in the city now," he said casually. "Both residential and commercial. Turns out your old man had a knack for business after all." Then it was my turn. I told him everything, about Mark's betrayal, his new wife and son, and finally, about Sarah's rejection. By the end, I was sobbing in his arms like a little girl. "I'm so sorry, Dad," I whispered. "You were right about Mark. I should have listened." "I forgave you long ago, sweetheart," he stroked my hair. "I'm just glad you're home now." After that day, I started visiting Dad regularly. It felt like making up for lost time. We talked about everything, his business, my life, our shared regrets. One evening, as we sat on his terrace overlooking the city, he made an unexpected proposal. "Come work for me," he said. "I need a good accountant for my company, someone I can trust. Someone who can learn the business from the ground up." "Dad, I don't know anything about real estate." "I'll teach you. You're smart, Paloma. You always have been. And maybe," he paused, "maybe it'll help take your mind off everything else." He was right. Learning the real estate business was exactly what I needed. Dad started teaching me everything: property valuation, contract negotiations, market analysis. For the first time in years, I felt truly excited about something. The numbers made sense to me, and the business strategies challenged my mind in ways my old accounting job never had. 3 years passed quickly as I immersed myself in learning the real estate business. I still checked Sarah's social media occasionally. That's how I learned she was graduating from college. There was no invitation for me to attend the ceremony. Instead, I received a brief message. "Don't come to graduation. Lisa says it would make her uncomfortable." The words stung, but they no longer surprised me. My daughter had made her choice clear: she wanted her father's new family, not me. The photos from her graduation showed her beaming between Mark and Lisa, her half-brother perched on Mark's shoulders. The perfect family portrait, complete without me. One evening, Dad invited me over for dinner. Something felt different. He was quieter than usual, more serious. After we finished eating, he led me to his study. "Sit down, sweetheart," he said, lowering himself carefully into his leather chair. "There's something I need to tell you." My heart clenched at his tone. "What is it, Dad?" "I've been sick for a while now," he said quietly. "Cancer. I've been fighting it for 3 years, but..." He shook his head slowly. "The doctors say I don't have much time left." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I had work to do," he smiled sadly. "I needed to prepare you to take over the business. That's why I brought you in when I did. I knew I needed time to teach you everything." I fell to my knees beside his chair, grabbing his hand. "Dad, no." "Hey now," he squeezed my hand. "Don't cry, sweetheart. We got these last 3 years together. We made peace. That's all I wanted, to know you were ready, to know we'd made things right between us. Now I can go peacefully." He was gone 3 months later. I arranged the funeral myself, trying to honor him as best I could. Through my grief, I sent Sarah a message. "Your grandfather passed away. The funeral is on Saturday. Please come." Her response came quickly and hit like a slap. Why would I care about some old man? Dad says he was nasty anyway. Not interested. I stared at the message in disbelief. The man she was dismissing had been ready to welcome her back into his life, despite her treatment of me. He had asked about her often, kept a photo of her on his desk. And now she couldn't even show basic human respect for his passing. The funeral was beautiful, attended by many of Dad's business associates and friends. Sarah's absence felt like a physical wound, but I stood tall, delivering the eulogy with all the strength I could muster. Afterward came the inheritance, the house I'd grown up in, now a mansion, the company I'd learned to run, all the properties Dad had accumulated over the years. His legacy, passed down to me. Everything Mark and Lisa flaunted their wealth with looked small in comparison. But I didn't want the mansion. Instead, I asked my assistant at the company to add it to our rental properties portfolio. I stayed in my apartment. I'd had it renovated exactly how I liked it, and it felt like home. My neighbors had become friends over the years, and the location was perfect for overseeing the business. 2 years passed quietly. The business thrived under my management, though my personal life remained empty of the one person I missed most. Then, out of nowhere, my phone rang with Sarah's number on the screen. "Mom," she said, without any greeting. "I'm getting married. We'll come by next week to talk about it. Jake wants to meet you." True to her word, Sarah arrived at my apartment the following week with her fiancé. I watched as she entered, her eyes scanning my living room with barely concealed disdain. "Still the same old place," she muttered, running a finger along my coffee table. "Still living in dullness and poverty, I see." I bit my tongue, focusing instead on Jake, who seemed uncomfortable with her comment. I busied myself preparing coffee and setting out the pastries I'd bought for their visit. "So," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "tell me about the wedding plans." Sarah straightened up, suddenly animated. "We're planning something spectacular. Only the absolute best venues in the city will do. The ceremony will be in 6 months. That's wonderful. Have you found a place yet?" "We're looking," Jake said politely. "We want something really special." Sarah cleared her throat. "Actually, Mom, that's partly why we're here. Weddings are expensive, you know." "Of course," I nodded. "I'd be happy to help. I can contribute $10,000. Sarah rolled her eyes dramatically. "Well, I guess that's better than nothing. Lisa's already promised to handle my dress and the honeymoon." They didn't stay long after that. As the door closed behind them, I sank onto my couch, thinking about the irony of it all. With the success of Dad's, now my, company, I could easily finance 10 such weddings without blinking an eye. But Sarah's attitude, her constant digs about my poverty, her complete lack of interest in my life, it all held me back. "Let's see how this plays out," I murmured to myself. I waited for a wedding invitation, checking my mail every day. Nothing came. Finally, curiosity got the better of me, and I visited Sarah's social media page. There it was, a lengthy post about her perfect wedding venue. My eyes widened as I read the name of the ceremony hall she'd chosen. The Grand Plaza, one of the most prestigious event venues in the city. Also one of my properties. Finally, her post read, "Jake and I found the most amazing venue for our wedding. The Grand Plaza is absolutely perfect, so elegant and exclusive. Just need to sign the rental agreement and everything will be set." I couldn't help but smile. Sarah had no idea that her poor mother owned the very hall she was so excited about. She'd chosen it precisely because it represented everything she thought I couldn't provide: luxury, elegance, wealth. A week after Sarah's visit with Jake, she showed up at my apartment alone. Her expression was cold, practiced. "Mom, I need to tell you something," she said, standing in my living room, not bothering to sit down. "I won't be inviting you to the wedding." I felt my heart crack, but kept my face neutral. "Why not?" "Look around," she gestured dismissively at my apartment. "The wedding will be at this gorgeous hall. Important people will be there: Jake's family, Dad's business associates, Lisa's friends. You." She looked me up and down. "You're too simple, too poor. You wouldn't fit in." The cruelty of her words took my breath away. "But hey," she added, heading for the door, "you can still send a gift." "Money would be best. I'll text you my card details." The door clicked shut behind her. I sat there for a long moment, then picked up my phone and made a call to my office. A week later, I walked into the Grand Plaza's executive office, where Sarah, Jake, and his parents were sitting with my property manager, ready to sign the rental agreement. Sarah was beaming, practically glowing with satisfaction, until she saw me walk in. "Mom?" Her jaw dropped. "What are you doing here?" I smiled, settling into the leather chair behind the desk. "The Grand Plaza belongs to me, along with several other luxury venues in the city. In fact," I gestured around us, "this entire company that manages these properties is mine." Sarah started stuttering. But how? Where did you get all this?" "Remember when I told you your grandfather had died? When I invited you to his funeral?" I kept my voice level. "The one you called some nasty old man? He left me everything: his company, his properties, his legacy." Sarah's face went from pale to red. Then, like flipping a switch, her expression changed to one I recognized, the same calculating look she'd worn when choosing between me and Lisa years ago. "Wait, if you own all this, then I'm your only heir. You have to give me the venue for free. And a wedding gift, maybe one of your properties?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Actually, I came here personally to deny your rental application." "What?" Sarah jumped to her feet. "You can't do that." "I can and I am." I stood up, gathering my papers. "I suggest you find another venue. And Sarah?" I paused at the door. "Maybe think about whether it's worth destroying relationships with people who truly love you just because they don't seem rich or important enough." "But Mom," Sarah's screams followed me down the hallway. "You can't do this to me. I'm your daughter, Mom." I kept walking, my heels clicking against the marble floor, drowning out her protests. For the first time in years, I felt truly strong, not because of my wealth or position, but because I'd finally stood up for myself. 3 days after my confrontation with Sarah at the Grand Plaza, a gold-embossed envelope arrived in my mail. Inside was an elaborate wedding invitation, the kind that probably cost more than most people's weekly salary. My phone buzzed with a message almost simultaneously. "Mom, I'm so sorry for everything," Sarah's message read. "I've been horrible to you. I've done a lot of thinking, and I realize now how wrong I was. I'm ready to cut ties with Dad and Lisa completely. We don't need them in our lives. Please come to my wedding. Please give me another chance." I sat on my couch, holding the invitation in one hand and my phone in the other, feeling an odd sense of déjà vu. The words were perfect, the apology seemed heartfelt, but something felt off. Then it hit me, this wasn't really about me at all. "When I chose your father and Lisa," I typed back slowly, "it was because they seemed to offer something better than what I had with my dad. More money, more excitement, more status. I abandoned someone who truly loved me for superficial things." Sound familiar? I waited, watching the 3 dots appear and disappear several times, before her response came through. "That's not fair, Mom. I really want to make things right." But I could see it clearly now. When Mark and Lisa had money and status, Sarah had chosen them. Now that she knew I was wealthy, she was choosing me. The pattern was painfully obvious. I didn't respond to her message. Instead, I placed the wedding invitation in my desk drawer, next to the photo of my father. The wedding date came and went. I spent that day working in my office, looking out over the city my father had built and I now managed. Sarah posted plenty of photos online. She'd found another venue, though not quite as prestigious as the Grand Plaza. She looked beautiful in her white dress, but her smile seemed forced. Sometimes I still check her social media, watch her life unfold from a distance. She doesn't post as many photos with Mark and Lisa anymore. I suppose the shine has worn off that relationship too. Occasionally, she still sends me messages, usually when she needs something, but I've learned to let them sit unanswered. I haven't given up hope for reconciliation. After all, it took me 15 years to understand what I'd done to my father, to truly regret choosing superficial things over real love. My dad waited patiently all those years, ready to welcome me back when I finally understood. Maybe that's my role now, to wait, to be ready if Sarah ever truly understands the difference between loving someone for who they are and loving them for what they can give you. Until then, I'll keep running the company Dad left me, living in my comfortable but modest apartment, and leaving the door open for the day when Sarah might come back, not because I'm rich or poor, but because I'm her mother.
Hi, I'm Charlotte, 35 and thriving in marketing. I thought I had life all figured out until I met James. He swept me off my feet, and before I knew it, we were saying, I do. Wild, right? But then came the twist. James had a 12-year-old son, Tyler. Moving in with him was like walking into a minefield. I tried everything to bond with Tyler. Hey buddy, I made your favorite lasagna. I'd say, hoping for even a hint of a smile. But all I got were eye rolls and mumbled whatevers. It was like talking to a brick wall. One night, while helping him with homework, I said, let's tackle these fractions together. He slammed the book shut and snapped, I don't need your help, you're not my mom. I turned to James for support, but all I got was, just give him time. But time wasn't working. Tyler's attitude got worse. Messy room, missed curfews, constant backtalk. When I tried to lay down some ground rules, James would swoop in. Don't be so hard on him, Charlotte, he'd say, completely undermining me. It left me questioning everything. Was I the problem? I needed to vent, so I called my best friend, Olivia. Girl, you won't believe what Tyler did today, I began. Spill the tea, she replied. I poured out everything. The disrespect, James' lack of support, the mess we were in. After a pause, Olivia said, Charlotte, honey, these are red flags. Are you sure you're not in over your head? I hesitated. I love James, but this is rough. I buried myself in work, hoping things would settle at home. But it backfired. A few weeks later, my boss called me into his office. Charlotte, is everything okay? Your presentations have been off. I forced a smile and said, just a little stress, it won't happen again. But inside, I knew something had to change, fast. Then came the phone call. Charlotte speaking, I answered. It was Tyler's school. We need you to come in immediately, said his teacher. My stomach dropped. When I arrived, Miss Thompson's grim expression set off alarms. Tyler has made a serious accusation against you, she said. What? What are you talking about? I stammered. He claims you've been physically abusing him, she explained. My world spun. That's impossible. I would never. As Miss Thompson continued, Child Protective Services was mentioned. It felt like drowning. Tyler's lying. I protested. Just then, James rushed in. What's going on? He asked, confused. After hearing the situation, he turned to Tyler. Is this true? Tyler nodded, avoiding eye contact. When? James pressed. Last week, when you were at work? Tyler mumbled. That never happened. I shouted, my composure cracking. CPS arrived and a worker told me I needed to leave the family home during the investigation. Leave? But I didn't do anything. I pleaded, turning to James for support. Maybe it's for the best, Charlotte, just until this gets sorted out, he said quietly. His words were a slap in the face. In a daze, I packed a bag and called Olivia. Can I crash at your place? I'll explain everything when I get there. She welcomed me with open arms, and as soon as I stepped through her door, I broke down. Between sobs, I told her everything. That little brat, she spat, and James. How could he not defend you? I don't know what to do, Liv. My life's falling apart. First things first, we're getting you a lawyer, Olivia said firmly. I know just the person. The next day, we met with Sandra Davis, a sharp-eyed family attorney. This is a serious situation, Sandra said, but false accusations happen. We'll fight this. At work, things got worse. Whispers followed me everywhere. Did you hear Charlotte's been accused of beating her stepson? My colleagues murmured. Mark, a coworker, approached me. Tough break, huh? Kids say the darndest things, he said with a smirk. He's lying, I said through gritted teeth. I didn't touch him. Mark backed off, raising his hands. Hey, where there's smoke. I wanted to scream but instead locked myself in the bathroom and called Olivia. I can't do this, Liv. Everyone thinks I'm a monster. You are strong, you are innocent, and we will get through this, Olivia said firmly. After hanging up, I caught my reflection in the mirror. I looked tired and scared, but there was something else. A spark of determination. I will not let this break me, I whispered. I will fight, and I will win. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of meetings with my lawyer, Sandra. We worked tirelessly to build my case. We need character witnesses, Sandra explained. Anyone who can vouch for your character and your relationship with Tyler. I nodded, thinking hard. My boss, Mr. Peterson, he's seen me interact with Tyler at company picnics. Mr. Peterson didn't hesitate when I called. Of course I'll testify, Charlotte. I've seen you with Tyler. You're nothing but patient and kind. His words brought tears to my eyes. Finally, someone believed in me. Sandra also arranged for a psychological evaluation. Dr. Ramirez was thorough, asking about everything, from my childhood to my relationship with James and my interactions with Tyler. After a few sessions, Dr. Ramirez concluded, I see no signs of abusive tendencies. In fact, you show a strong desire to nurture and protect. It was a small victory, but I'd take what I could get. Meanwhile, James had gone radio silent. When he did reach out, it was all about him. People are talking, Charlotte. This is affecting my business. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Your business, my entire life is falling apart. He hung up without responding. A few days later, Olivia called, her voice tight with anger. You won't believe what I just heard. What now? I sighed. I was at Starbucks and overheard James talking to some neighbors. He was bad-mouthing you, Charlotte. He said he should have known better than to marry someone he barely knew. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. He said that? After everything I've done for him and Tyler. I'm so sorry, honey, Olivia said softly. You deserve better than this. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Miss Thompson, Tyler's teacher, requested an urgent meeting with Sandra and me. I've noticed some inconsistencies in Tyler's story, she began, looking uncomfortable. I did some digging, and this isn't the first time Tyler has made false accusations. My heart raced. What do you mean? Miss Thompson sighed. Last year, he accused a teacher of favoritism after he didn't get the lead role in the school play. It was investigated and found to be completely fabricated. Sandra leaned forward, her tone sharp. And you're just bringing this up now. Miss Thompson looked ashamed. I feel terrible. I should have checked his history more thoroughly before escalating things. I'm here to make it right. As the investigation deepened, more truths came to light. Tyler's school counselor revealed a pattern of manipulative behavior. Tyler often plays his dad and you against each other, the counselor explained. He shows signs of emotional neglect and creates drama to get attention. It all started to make sense, the tantrums, the lies, the manipulation. Tyler was crying out for help in the worst possible way. But the most shocking revelation came from Tyler's best friend, Kevin. In a moment of guilt, Kevin confessed to Sandra that Tyler had bragged about his plan. He said he was going to make up stories about his stepmom so his dad would kick her out, Kevin admitted. He said his dad always believes him and buys him stuff to make up for it. I felt a mix of anger and pity. Tyler had been hurting for so long, and James had been too blind to see it. As the truth unraveled, I thought back to all the red flags I had ignored. The way James would dismiss Tyler's bad behavior, the expensive gifts that followed every tantrum. I should have seen it, I told Olivia over coffee. I was so focused on making it work, I missed what was really going on. Olivia squeezed my hand. You can't blame yourself. You were trying to be a good wife and stepmom. I nodded, a plan forming in my mind. You're right, but now it's time to start fighting for myself. The day the case was officially dropped should have felt like a victory, but it was bittersweet. My name was cleared, but the damage was done. I couldn't go back to that house, to James and Tyler. It wasn't home anymore. I met with Sandra to discuss the next steps. I want a divorce, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Sandra nodded, unsurprised. We'll cite James's lack of support and Tyler's false accusations. It should be straightforward. Straightforward maybe, but not easy. Every signature on those papers felt like I was closing a chapter of my life I'd never get back. At work, I threw myself into every project that came my way. During my review, Mr. Peterson said, "Charlotte, your performance these past few months has been exceptional. I'm promoting you to Senior Marketing Director." I nearly fell out of my chair. "Thank you, sir. I don't know what to say." He smiled. "There's more. The position is in our New York office. A fresh start, if you want it." I didn't even hesitate. "I'll take it." As I packed up my life, Olivia helped, filling me in on the local gossip. "James is having a rough time," she said. "Lost a bunch of clients when the truth came out, and Tyler got suspended for bullying." I felt a twinge of, not quite sympathy, but something close. "I hope they get help," I said, surprising myself. They both need it. New York was everything I needed. New job, new apartment, new me. I even started volunteering at a youth center, mentoring kids from troubled homes. It felt good to use my experience to help others. 2 years flew by. One afternoon, as I reviewed quarterly reports, my assistant brought in a letter. The return address made my heart skip. Tyler's old school. Inside was a note from Miss Thompson. "Dear Charlotte, I hope this letter finds you well. I'm writing to inform you that Tyler has been caught in a serious lie at his new school. He's facing expulsion. James has reached out for help, but I thought you should know. Sincerely, Miss Thompson." I sat back, a whirlwind of emotions hitting me. Part of me wanted to laugh at the irony. Another part ached for the troubled kid I tried so hard to help. "You okay, boss?" my assistant Jen asked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I smiled, folding the letter. Just a blast from the past. Nothing to worry about. That night, as I got ready for my date with Michael, a kind, understanding man I'd met through my volunteer work, I thought about how far I'd come. 2 years ago, I was fighting to prove my innocence. Now, I was thriving in a job I loved, helping kids who needed it, and dating someone who respected me. As Michael and I walked to dinner hand in hand, I realized something. I was happy, truly, genuinely happy. "What are you smiling about?" Michael asked, squeezing my hand. I looked up at the New York skyline, my adopted home. Just thinking about how sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead us to the best places. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Well, I'm glad whatever happened led you here." Me too, I thought. I had survived, I had thrived, and I had found happiness. Meanwhile, those who'd wronged me were facing the consequences of their actions. It wasn't about revenge, it was about justice. And the best revenge was living well. As we entered the restaurant, I made a decision. That letter. I wasn't going to respond. That chapter of my life was closed. I had a new story to write, and I couldn't wait to see how it would unfold. The story ends here, but the conversation is just beginning. What would you have done in Charlotte's shoes when you received that letter about Tyler 2 years later? Would you have responded, offering help despite the pain he caused? Or would you have kept that chapter firmly closed? Your experiences shape your perspective, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop your answer in the comments below and let's get a discussion going. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Hey, I'm Sarah. I'm 18 and about to graduate high school. Life's been complicated. I lost my mom when I was 12, and yeah, that sucked. Dad did his best, but 2 years ago, he decided we needed some female guidance in the house. That's when Veronica came along, my stepmother. Spoiler, she's no fairy godmother. "Sarah, honey, don't you think that shirt's a bit much for school?" Veronica's voice is all sugar, but I can tell it's fake as I grab my backpack. I roll my eyes. "It's fine, Veronica. Dad bought it for me last month, remember?" "Oh, of course, dear. I just worry about the impression you're making." Yeah, right. She's always pulling these little mind games, trying to make me second-guess myself. But I'm not falling for it. I dash out the door, texting my best friend, Emma, as I head to school. At it again. Save me, I type. Emma replies instantly. She's the worst. Want me to accidentally spill something on her at the next family dinner? I laugh, feeling better already. Emma's been my rock through all this stepmom drama. At lunch, we're sitting together when my boyfriend Mike plops down next to us. Hey, beautiful, he says, giving me a quick kiss. You ready for the big chem test? I groan. Don't remind me, but yeah, I think I've got it. You know me, always prepared. Emma chimes in, yeah, little Miss Valedictorian over here. Save some brains for the rest of us, will you? We all laugh, and for a moment, I forget about the tension waiting for me at home. But it comes crashing back when I walk in the door to see Veronica, her perfectly manicured nails tapping away on her phone. Oh, Sarah, there you are. I was just looking at some lovely dresses for your graduation. This pink one would be darling on you. I peek at her screen. The dress is hideous, all ruffles and bows, like something for a 5-year-old. Thanks, but I've already picked out my dress with Dad, I say, keeping my voice neutral. Her eyes narrow for a split second, then she plasters on that fake smile again. Well, I'm sure whatever you chose is nice. I hurry upstairs, texting Emma. *V tried to get me in a Barbie nightmare dress for graduation. EELP, *. Emma replies, *, no way. She's totally trying to sabotage your big day. Don't let her *. I flop onto my bed, staring at the ceiling. Graduation should be exciting. But with Veronica around, I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop. My phone buzzes. It's Mike. Hey, you okay? You seem stressed at lunch. I smile, typing back. Yeah, just stepmom stuff. Nothing new. Thanks for checking in. At least I've got good people on my side. With Emma and Mike backing me up, I can handle whatever Veronica throws my way. Bring it on, set monster. Graduation photos should be a fun milestone, but I knew there'd be drama. Veronica cornered me one morning, her fake enthusiasm on full display. Sarah, darling, I've got the perfect makeup artist for your photos. My friend Tanya is absolutely fabulous. Thanks, but I was thinking of doing my own makeup. Her eyes narrowed. Now, don't be silly. This is a special occasion. Your father agrees it's best to have a professional. Great, she'd already roped Dad into this. I sighed, nodding reluctantly. The day of the shoot arrived and Tanya showed up, looking strangely nervous. I caught her and Veronica whispering and giggling. Red flags everywhere, but what could I do? All right, Sarah, let's make you gorgeous, Tanya said, spinning my chair away from the mirror. Trust me, you're in good hands. But as she worked, my skin crawled. The foundation felt thick, the eyeshadow heavy. I couldn't see a thing, and Veronica kept gushing about how stunning I looked. Finally, Tanya stepped back. All done, ready to see. She spun me around, and I nearly fell out of the chair. Staring back at me was a clown. Bright red cheeks, blue eyeshadow up to my eyebrows, and lips outlined way past their natural shape in deep purple. What is this? I stammered. Veronica gasped dramatically. Oh my, Tanya, darling, I think you may have gone a bit overboard. Tanya looked down at the floor. I am so sorry, I must have misunderstood the brief. The photographer, bless him, stepped in. Maybe we should reschedule, give you time to adjust the look. I nodded, fighting back tears as I rushed to the bathroom to scrub it all off. As I passed by, I overheard Veronica and Tanya in the hallway. Did you see her face? Veronica whispered, giggling. Priceless. That'll teach her to be so full of herself. Tanya laughed nervously. You're sure she won't figure it out? Please, she's clueless. Now, not a word. I froze, fury and hurt washing over me. Grabbing my phone, I texted Emma. 911. V sabotaged my photos. Need you. 10 minutes later, Emma burst into the bathroom. Holy crap, what did they do to you? I broke down, telling her everything as she helped me remove the makeup. I can't believe she'd stooped this low, I sobbed. Emma hugged me tight. We'll fix this, I promise, and we'll make her pay. My phone buzzed. Mike. How'd the photos go? I hesitated, then sent him a selfie of my tear-streaked, half-clown face. This bad. Call you later. His response was instant. I'm coming over. Nobody messes with my girl. As Emma and I left the bathroom, we ran straight into Veronica. Oh, Sarah, there you are. I was so worried. Are you okay, sweetie? I looked her dead in the eye. I'm fine, Veronica, just fine. Her fake smile faltered for a second. She knew I knew. Game on, step monster. Later that night, curled up in my room with Emma and Mike, I felt a surge of determination rise within me. Guys, I'm done playing nice, I said, my voice steady. It's time to show Veronica who she's really messing with. Emma grinned wickedly. Count me in. Operation Stepmom Takedown starts now. Mike squeezed my hand, his eyes full of support. We've got your back, babe, always. I nodded, my mind racing as a plan began to take shape. Veronica thought she could humiliate me, but she had no idea what was coming. This soon-to-be graduate was about to teach her a lesson she'd never forget. After the photo fiasco, I knew I had to dig deeper into Veronica's past. Something just didn't sit right with me, and I was determined to get to the bottom of it. Emma, I need your help, I said, pacing my room. We need to find dirt on Veronica. Emma cracked her knuckles with a smirk. I'm on it. Operation Stepmom Takedown is officially a go. We spent the next several days combing through social media, old newspapers, and any public records we could find. Emma even sweet-talked the school secretary into accidentally letting her see Veronica's background check. Sarah, check this out, Emma said one afternoon, pointing at her laptop screen. Your dad set up a college fund for you when you were born. It's huge now. I frowned. Yeah. So guess who became co-trustee when she married your dad? Veronica, I whispered, my blood running cold. Emma nodded grimly. It's looking that way. Later that day, Mike came by looking excited. Babe, I think I've got something that could help. My cousin Jake is a private investigator. He owes me a favor. I hugged him tight. Mike, you're a genius. Jake agreed to look into Veronica's past, and a week later, he came back with a bombshell. Your stepmom's been busy, Jake said, sliding a file across the table. 3 previous marriages, all to wealthy, older men. Each ended in divorce within 2 years, and she walked away with a nice chunk of change every time. I felt sick. She's a gold digger. Jake nodded. And a good one. She's also got a history of fraud. She's changed her name a couple of times to avoid detection. Armed with this info, I decided it was time to confront Tanya. I cornered her at the local coffee shop. Tanya, I know Veronica put you up to the makeup stunt. I need to know why. Tanya broke down, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Sarah. Veronica has dirt on me. She threatened to expose some mistakes from my past if I didn't help her. I softened. Tanya, Veronica is the bad guy here, not you. Help me take her down, and I promise I'll help you too. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Okay, what do you need? Back home, I was digging through Dad's old emails. Don't judge desperate times when I struck gold. There were messages from Veronica to a friend bragging about how she'd landed a rich sucker and how she'd be set once I get my hands on the brat's college fund. I sat back stunned. I had her. But how could I tell Dad without breaking his heart? Emma and Mike came over for an emergency strategy session. We need to expose her publicly, Emma said, pacing the room. Make it impossible for her to wiggle out of it. Mike nodded. But we've got to be careful. Your dad needs to see the truth for himself. I took a deep breath. I've got an idea. It's risky, but if it works. As we hammered out the details, I felt a surge of confidence. Veronica had underestimated me. She thought I was just some dumb kid she could manipulate, but she was about to find out just how wrong she was. The big day arrived. Operation Expose Veronica was in full swing. I convinced Dad to host a family dinner to celebrate my upcoming graduation. Little did he know what was really on the menu. Once we were all seated, I stood up, my heart pounding. Before we eat, I have something important to share. Veronica's eyes narrowed slightly. Sarah, dear, can it wait? We're all hungry. No, it can't, I said firmly. Dad, Veronica isn't who you think she is. Dad looked confused. Sarah, what are you talking about? I took a deep breath. Veronica married you for your money, specifically for my college fund. Veronica laughed nervously. Don't be ridiculous, Sarah. Where do you get these ideas? I nodded to Jake, the PI. He stood up, handing out folders. These contain Veronica's history, 3 previous marriages, all to wealthy men, all ending in divorce within 2 years. Veronica's face went pale. This is absurd. Robert, you can't believe this nonsense. Dad was flipping through the folder, his expression darkening. Veronica, is this true? There's more, I continued. Emma, show him the emails. Emma pulled out her tablet, displaying the messages Veronica had sent to her friend about her rich sucker husband and her plans for my college fund. Veronica stood up, knocking over her wine glass. These are fake. Sarah's trying to turn you against me. It's all true, a quiet voice said. We all turned to see Tanya standing in the doorway. I'm sorry, Sarah. Veronica blackmailed me into humiliating you at the photo shoot. Veronica's eyes blazed with fury. You little snitch. I'll ruin you for this. The room fell silent. Veronica realized her mistake too late. Dad stood up slowly, his voice cold. I've heard enough. Veronica, get out of my house. Now, I'll be contacting my lawyer in the morning. Veronica looked around wildly, then lunged for her purse. You'll regret this, all of you. As the door slammed behind her, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was over. Dad turned to me, his eyes misty. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I smiled softly, placing a hand on his arm. It's okay, Dad. We're going to be okay. Suddenly, I heard a familiar voice calling my name. Oh, Sarah. Over here. Emma was waving frantically from across the quad. I jogged over, grinning. What's got you so excited? She thrust her phone at me. Check it out. Veronica got arrested for fraud. Karma's a well, you know. I couldn't help but laugh, shaking my head. Can't say I'm surprised. Oh, did I show you my new graduation photos? I pulled out my wallet, showing her the retakes, me smiling confidently, looking like myself. Much better than clown college. Emma teased. Just then, Mike appeared, slipping an arm around my waist and giving me a quick kiss. Ready for the Dean's List celebration dinner? I nodded, glancing around at my friends and thinking about Dad, who was waiting for us at the restaurant. You know what? I really am. As we strolled across campus, a sense of pride washed over me. Despite everything Veronica had thrown my way, I come out stronger. My classes were going great, I had incredible friends, and my bond with Dad was stronger than ever. Hey, Mike said softly, you okay? You looked lost in thought for a second. I smiled, squeezing his hand, just thinking about how far we've come and how excited I am for what's next. Emma threw her arms around us both, laughing. Whatever it is, we'll face it together. Now come on, I'm starving. We all laughed, heading off into the evening, ready for whatever adventures lay ahead. Veronica had tried to break me, but instead she'd only made me stronger. Asterisk, the story has come to an end, but now I want to hear from you, asterisk. If you were in my shoes, would you have exposed Veronica publicly or tried to handle the situation privately with your father? What do you think are the ethical implications of airing family issues in front of others? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experiences and opinions matter and might help someone facing a similar situation. And if you enjoyed this story and want to hear more like it, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Hey everyone, I'm Sarah. Where do I even begin? I guess it all started during my senior year of high school. I was always the straightest student, honor roll, the whole package. But more than the grades, I had dreams. Big ones. My dad and I used to talk about them for hours. Sarah, he'd say with that familiar twinkle in his eye, you're going to change the world one day. I just know it. I miss him. Every day, he was my rock, my biggest cheerleader. We'd sit on the porch swing after dinner, and he'd listen, really listen. When I talked about becoming a marine biologist, he even bought me my first microscope the day after I told him. But then, he got sick. It all happened so fast. 1 minute he was there, strong, vibrant, and the next, he was gone. Just like that. My world shattered. Mom took it hard, as you'd imagine. It felt like we were living with a ghost. The house, once full of warmth, became cold and empty. I tried to hold things together, but I was drowning too. That's when Richard came into the picture. Mom met him at a support group for widows and widowers. At first, I was happy for her. She was smiling again, laughing even. But then things started to change. 6 months into their relationship, Richard moved in. From day one, he tried to take over as the man of the house, as if he could erase every trace of my dad. "Your father's not here anymore," he'd say when I mentioned a memory or tradition. "Things are different now. You need to accept that." But I couldn't. I wouldn't. Dad may have been gone, but he was still a part of me. Richard just didn't get that. Over time, Richard's behavior became more controlling. He criticized everything: my clothes, my friends, even my love for science. "Why waste time with those books? You should learn something useful, like cooking or cleaning," he'd snap. It was suffocating. I felt like I was walking on eggshells in my own home. Mom noticed, but she never said anything. Maybe she was afraid of being alone again. I don't know. But I threw myself into my studies. It was the one thing Richard couldn't take from me. I joined every academic club, stayed late at school, anything to avoid going home. By senior year, I had a 4.0 GPA and was captain of the debate team. My guidance counselor, Ms. Thompson, was thrilled. "Sarah," she said, "with your grades and extracurriculars, you can get into any college you want." I had been dreaming about that moment for years. With her help, I applied to 5 top marine biology programs across the country. Then the acceptance letters started pouring in. I couldn't believe it, full rides to 3 schools. For the first time since Dad died, I felt like things were finally looking up. I couldn't wait to tell Mom. I rushed home, letters in hand, bursting through the door. "Mom, you won't believe it. I got in everywhere." But it wasn't Mom who came into the hallway. It was Richard. "What's all this noise?" he demanded, snatching the letters from me before I could stop him. I watched in horror as his face twisted in anger. "College? You think you're going to college?" he sneered. "You're not smart enough for that." Then, before I could react, he tore the letters into pieces. As they fell to the floor, so did my heart. "There," he said coldly, "now you can focus on more important things, like helping your mother around the house." He walked away, leaving me standing in the ruins of my future. But something in me snapped. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next day, I cornered my best friend, Mia. "I need your help," I whispered. "I'm reapplying to colleges, but Richard can't know." Without hesitation, she agreed. We came up with a plan. Mia would let me use her address for all college correspondence. After school, we'd go to the library to work on applications. To Richard, I was just studying with a friend. As time passed, Richard's suspicions grew. "You're spending a lot of time at the library," he said one evening, narrowing his eyes. I shrugged it off. "Senior year. Lots of homework," I lied. He wasn't convinced, but he let it slide. To fund my secret plan, I picked up a part-time job at a local cafe. It was exhausting, balancing work and school, but it was worth it. "Why do you need a job?" Richard asked. "We provide everything you need." "I want to save for a car," I lied smoothly. That seemed to satisfy him, as if I was planning to stick around after graduation. Miss Thompson became my strongest ally, staying late to help with my applications and writing glowing recommendations. "You're one of the brightest students I've ever had," she said. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Then the acceptance letters started arriving at Mia's house. Full rides to 3 top marine biology programs. But I had to keep it hidden, for now. One evening, I overheard Richard talking to Mom in the kitchen. I pressed myself against the wall, straining to listen. "Sarah's college fund," Richard was saying. "We should use it for my new business venture. It's not like she'll need it anyway." My blood ran cold. They were planning to take my future away again. But this time, I was ready. This time, I had a plan. With graduation approaching, Mia, Ms. Thompson, and I kicked our plans into high gear. I decided on Coastal University, renowned for its marine biology program. "I've arranged for your scholarship and financial aid packages," Ms. Thompson explained. "You'll have everything you need." But as the day got closer, doubt crept in. Could I really leave Mom behind with Richard? "She's an adult, Sarah," Mia reminded me gently. "You can't put your life on hold forever." I knew she was right, but it didn't make it any easier. The night before I was set to leave, disaster struck. Richard barged into my room, waving a letter he'd intercepted from Coastal University. "What is this?" he roared. "You think you can go behind my back?" I stood my ground, heart pounding. "Yes, I can. And I did. I'm going to college, Richard. You can't stop me." His face turned a deep shade of purple. "Like hell I can't, you ungrateful little." "That's enough. A voice interrupted. We both turned to see Mom standing in the doorway, her face pale but determined. "Sarah," she said softly, "is this true? You got into college?" I nodded, tears welling up. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I was afraid." "Don't you dare apologize." Mom cut me off, turning to Richard. "I've stood by and watched you bully my daughter for too long. No more. Sarah is going to college and that's final." Richard sputtered, but Mom raised her hand. "And if you have a problem with that, you can pack your bags and leave." In that moment, I saw my mom as I remembered her before Dad died. Strong, fierce, and protective. The next morning, Mom helped me load my bags into the car. Richard was nowhere to be seen. "I'm so proud of you," Mom said, hugging me tight. "And I'm so sorry I didn't stand up for you sooner. But that's going to change. I promise." As I drove away, watching Mom wave in the rearview mirror, I felt a bittersweet mix of sadness and hope. This wasn't an ending, it was a new beginning. 4 years passed in a blur of classes, research, and new experiences. Before I knew it, I was standing on stage, delivering the valedictorian speech at my college graduation. And so, as we step into the future, I concluded, let's remember that our greatest strength lies not just in what we know, but in our ability to persevere in the face of adversity. Applause filled the auditorium, and I caught sight of Mom in the audience, beaming with pride. She had kept her promise, divorcing Richard and rebuilding her life. Over the past 4 years, we had grown closer than ever. After the ceremony, I was approached by Dr. Olson, a renowned marine biologist. "Impressive speech, Sarah," she said. "How would you like to join our research team at the Pacific Marine Research Center?" I could hardly believe it. It was my dream job. "I'd be honored," I managed, trying to contain my excitement. That night, as Mom and I celebrated over dinner, she filled me in on the latest news from home. Richard's business venture failed spectacularly, she told me. Last I heard, he was facing fraud charges. I felt a twinge of satisfaction, quickly followed by guilt. "I shouldn't be happy about that," I mumbled. Mom reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "You're allowed to feel however you feel, sweetie. What matters is how you act on those feelings." A few weeks later, as I was settling into my new job and apartment, I received an unexpected call. It was Richard. "Sarah," he said, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. I owe you an apology. I was wrong about you. About everything." I remained silent, unsure how to respond. "I've made some mistakes," he continued. "Big ones. I was hoping, maybe you could help me get back on my feet, for old time's sake." For a moment, I was tempted. Isn't that what good people do? Forgive and help those who've wronged them. But then I remembered all the nights I cried myself to sleep, all the times he'd made me feel worthless. "I'm sorry, Richard," I said firmly, "but I can't help you. I wish you the best, but our relationship is over. Please don't contact me again." I hung up, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't about revenge or holding a grudge. It was about protecting my peace and the life I had worked so hard to build. 6 months later, I stood on the deck of a research vessel, watching the sun rise over the Pacific. Mia and Miss Thompson had flown out to visit, and Mom was due to arrive next week. As I looked out at the endless horizon, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. It hadn't been easy, but I'd made it. I'd proven Richard wrong, but more importantly, I'd proven myself right. "Hey, Sarah," one of my colleagues called out. "We've got some interesting data from last night's dive. Want to take a look?" I grinned, turning away from the railing. "Absolutely," I replied. "Let's see what we've discovered." As I headed back inside, a sense of peace washed over me. This was where I belonged. This was the future Dad had always seen for me, the one I fought so hard to achieve. And it was beautiful. Settling into my new life as a marine biologist, I found myself thriving in ways I never imagined. My research on coral reef conservation gained international attention, leading to speaking engagements at conferences around the world. Mom visited often, proud of the woman I'd become. She found happiness too, rediscovering her passion for painting and even opening a small gallery in our hometown. Mia and I remained close despite the distance, and she became a successful journalist, often joking that she'd write my biography someday. Miss Thompson had retired from counseling but stayed in touch, always eager to hear about my latest adventures. The story has now concluded. What would you have done in Sarah's position when Richard called asking for help? Would you have forgiven him and offered assistance or maintained your boundaries as Sarah did? Your experiences and perspectives matter, so please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more like it, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us.